Yo, what's going on, guys? Nick Anderson here, and what we want to do in this video for you guys is basically teach you how to anchor yourself to a successful lifestyle. And what I mean by that is basically creating rituals for your life to, live a successful life. Because you guys, most people, they consciously want to live a better life. A lot of people, they say, oh, I want to make more money, or, oh, I want to become healthier, oh, I want to lose a lot of weight, or, oh, I want to have a better relationship. And a lot of people out there, they consciously want that, but unconsciously, they're actually self-sabotaging themselves to where they can't live that type of lifestyle. So I'm going to teach you guys, anchors. And what are anchors? If you think about it, an anchor is something that when you're in a peak emotional state, whatever you do at that time in that emotional state gets anchored in your unconscious mind and gets linked in your nervous system. So just let me give you an example, you guys. There was actually a study done, and it was with a bunch of dogs, and they did a time where they were going to feed the dogs a bunch of food, and at that time the dogs would drool when they were hungry. So when the dogs would drool, they would ring a bell over and over and over again, and they did this for several days. Now it got to the point where all they had to do was ring a bell and the dogs would basically salivate, and they would start drooling all over the place. Now that's a example with animals, obviously, but how does this work with humans? Let me give you another example. So when people are working, let's say they don't like their job, they're not having fun at their work, and they get in a bad emotional state. When they come home, the first person they see might be their wife, or it might be their husband, and because they associated that bad negative thinking while they are at work having a negative time, when they see their wife, immediately they associate that as that negative emotion right there. So that's just another example. I got another one for you guys. When I was actually going to the dentist as a kid, I used to eat a lot of candy when I was younger. I would get a lot of cavities, so I had to go into the dentist a lot. So when I would go into the dentist, I would sit down in the chair. I absolutely hated that because I'm deathly afraid of needles, still am, and when I would have my cavity fixed, my teeth would hurt. So eventually it got to the point where unconsciously that pain, when I would walk into the dentist office, my teeth would start hurting, just because I had associated that within my nervous system. So you guys, anchors, we're doing them all the time, So one thing you gotta realize is, how can you associate a positive anchor to where you can use that to initiate a specific and emotional response whenever you want. So let's say you're like prospecting someone, or let's say you're hopping on the phone, on an opportunity call or a conference call. How can you get yourself in a positive and, powerful emotional state to where, you can kill that call, you can sign up the prospect, and you can close the deal? There's basically two things you guys can do, and it's very, very simple. Paul and I were actually watching some Tony Robbins, earlier this morning, and what he talks about is, he says, whenever you're feeling in a prime emotional state, you're at the peak of an emotional state, whether you're angry, whether you're happy, or whether you're excited, anything that you do continuously at that time gets linked unconsciously, okay? I'll just give you guys an example. There's two things you can do. The first thing you can do is get yourself into a peak emotional state, because the only way this is going to work is when you're at the peak of your state. Jordan Belfort talks about this, Anthony Robbins talks about this. If you're not in a peak emotional state, whether you're extremely confident or extremely happy, this won't work. You can't create that anchor and link it into your unconscious mind. So, how this works, you guys, very, very simple. You get into the peak state, you can think in your head, close your eyes, and visualize yourself when you're extremely powerful. When you're like on a conference call, or when you're speaking up in front of a room of people, or maybe when you're at some point in your life when you're extremely confident, extremely like happy, or whatever it may be. Once you do that, you create a link within that, and there's a bunch of different links you can do, a bunch of different anchors, okay? You can do physical links, there's like sights, there's auditory, there's smells, there's touches, there's anything like that. So just to give you a quick example, let's say you're speaking on a call, a conference call, and you're doing extremely well. You got a lot of people on that call, and right at that point, you close someone into your company, into your business, okay? Now at that point, you can do a link. You can, let's say, for example, you smell like a candle right at that point when you close them, at that peak emotional state. So you smell that candle, and you do it over and over and over again, so you close another person to your company. You smell that candle, like lavender, or let's say like cinnamon, or something extremely powerful, okay? You smell it. Now let's say you're about to hop on a conference call. All you have to do is you smell that. You smell that scent right there, and it gets you into that state. Or there's a bunch of different things you do. You can touch yourself. Like, let's say you slap your shoulder right there, and you're like, yes. Or you do something where, you touch yourself in a specific spot over and over and over again. Like Anthony Robbins, you always see him clapping his hands and saying yes. That's how he gets himself psyched up before he speaks on stage. So,
all right, you guys, so to give you guys some examples of how Anthony Robbins has actually used, these anchors and helped people get out of certain situations, or get past certain barriers in their life. There was a story that Nick was telling me the other day that Anthony Robbins was talking to this lady. And it was kind of funny because when he was talking to this lady about her emotional issues, and by the way, the guy charges, a lot of money, and he can, because he helps people get past those barriers in their life. She's talking about her husband and how her husband and her had some serious issues, how they had some serious problems. So what she would do is she'd start to cry after a little bit. She'd talk. He'd listen. And then finally she'd start to cry a little bit. And then he noticed that she'd do something with her hand and touch her face in a certain way. And as soon as she did that, he'd take a glass of water. He took a glass of water literally and dumped it on her face, threw it into her face. And she was like, "What the hell did you just do that for?" She's like, "What's going on?" But she trusted him. So obviously I wouldn't tell you to go do that to someone, because that'd be it'd be funny. Get it on video, put it on YouTube. But reality is, you can't really go do that to someone unless, they fully trust you and they're able to understand, okay, this is for the best. He's doing this for me in some way or another, even if you don't understand the process right away. So then, he's like, "Oh," she's like, "What did you do that for?" And he's like, "Well, nothing. Honestly, I just was doing it so, he just didn't even answer really. He just kind of avoided the answer altogether. So he sat there and listened to her speak some more. She started speaking more about their problems, more about their issues. She did that exact same thing with her hand, touched her face in a certain way, or her hair. And then all of a sudden, as soon as she did that, he'd take a glass of water, pour it on her face. And at that point in time, she stood up and she's like, "Seriously, you need to tell me what the hell you're doing this for. This is getting ridiculous." And then, so he's like, "Oh, nothing, no big deal. Let's just get back to your story. Get back to your story." Now she's drenched. She's got makeup all over her face. She's got eyeliner, all that mascara everywhere. And then finally, she sits down, starts talking to him again about her issues. One last time, she starts to feel that serious emotion again. That peak state that Nick was talking about, that peak state that put her in that emotional hurt, because she was thinking about her husband. And so she had associated this touching feeling to her face with that anger, with that sorrow. And at that point in time, he took another glass of water. She didn't even notice she was doing it. Took a glass of water, tossed it in her face. And then she got up, and she was so mad that she started to laugh. And see, at that moment in time, Anthony Robbins went, "Got it." And she's like, "What did you do?" "Well, I noticed every single time you were, because here's the deal, you guys. The body language always precedes the emotion. It's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Most of us don't know how our minds work. Most of us don't know how our body language works. But your body language explains a lot about what you're feeling at the moment. So because she was doing this, that made her feel bad. She would touch herself, like Nick said, in a certain way, and literally the body language would precede the action. So he said, "Well, I noticed that you were touching yourself in a certain way at that moment in time, that you were feeling that distress, that sorrow. And so all I had to do was break that simple, action that you were doing, and change the emotion, change the anchor by simply making you laugh." See, at that point in time, when you did this, your anger was so furious at that point that all of a sudden you realize, "What the hell is this is ridiculous." She started laughing. And when she started laughing, he broke the anchor that she had over herself in that aspect. And now every time she touches herself in a certain way on her face, she laughs, because she thinks about her husband in a positive way and laughs. She laughs when she thinks about her husband. He broke, a negative habit that she created within herself. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. A lot of us have negative anchors that we don't, really understand, that we don't really realize. I remember listening to Jordan Belfort talk one time, and he said, "I remember I grew up and I smelled, elephant crap, and it made me cry when I was going to the zoo. So anytime now I smell elephant crap, it literally puts me in a distressed state. I'm just like, oh God, this smells like crap. I hate it." And the funny thing is, I didn't realize that until now, but I used to mow lawns, you guys, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, when I was in college. And the thing was, I was mowing lawns, and every single morning I remember waking up to the smell of grass. And it really doesn't. Now when I smell grass, anytime I smell grass after the lawn is freshly mowed, I get negative thoughts, because I smelled it, because it's one of my 5 senses I've attached an anchor to. That anchor is pulling me back to that exact moment in time when I remember having to wake up at 6 in the morning to go work a job that I didn't like doing, you guys. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So how do you create a positive anchor for yourself? Exactly how do you start to create positive anchors? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have to put yourself into a peak emotion. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go, jump up in the air, say, "Yes, let's do it, man, let's go," because honestly, that's not setting an anchor. What I'm asking you to do is, as soon as you're in a peak emotional state, when you've closed someone, like Nick said, when you've talked to someone about the business and you had the guts to do, you finally did it. At the very end of that, you're feeling great. At that moment in time, I want you to set an anchor. For me, my positive anchors, okay? When I want to get into a state of certainty about a situation, I go like this: yes. And I don't barely touch it. No, I slap my hand. Yes, because that moment in time, I associated that feeling and the word yes with certainty. Right now, I just got a lot more certain because my body language perceives my emotion. And now it's the same thing if you want to associate a scent with it, just like I was talking about the scent of grass. Well, what I started doing after I did this yes, and when I wanted to be really certain, I started associating a scent of smell. I use this stuff, it's called orange ginger. It's a very powerful smell. Anytime I want to get really certain, I go like this, yes, and then I smell it. And all of a sudden, my entire physiology changes. My entire physiology changes, you guys. And that's something that you can start to do for yourself too. So start to notice these little habits that you have that create negative anchors within your life that bring you back to a certain moment in time or a peak emotional state that are really making you negative or making you sad or feel sorrow. And then start to set positive anchors for yourself by doing things like maybe gripping your hand when you want to be certain, okay? Or when you hold back, I lower my tone of voice because my body language precedes my emotions, you guys. That being said, if you want some more help learning how to, set an anchor, or you want some mentorship or leadership from us, all right, call us, hit us up on Facebook, do what you need to do, and we'll help you to set those anchors, you guys. See ya.